It's happened again. We thought they had learned from their past mistakes, but we were wrong.
Seriously, this thing is going to be a financial and cultural disaster.
The warning signs were all there, but they ignored them. And after dumping more than $200 million into the abyss, Disney's unleashed another nightmarish remake of one of their classic films. This time, the victim was their first feature-length animated film, the one that put them on the map and set a new standard for the world of animation: Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But I'm not here to talk about that. To be honest, I'm just trying to capitalize off the trend. Instead of focusing on the messed up remake, I'd rather discuss some messed up origins. I'm talking the seriously twisted original fairy tales that inspired Disney's classic adaptation. Now, I've already covered their main source of inspiration, the Grimm Brothers version, along with the Italian variant by Giambattista Basile. But today, I'm going to share some variants from two other countries that are so dark and disturbing that Disney couldn't have adapted them if they wanted to. One of which you guys have requested so often that I feel sort of guilty for not including it in our previous Snow White episode, while the other has a brutal ending that's so wildly out of pocket that I couldn't not share it with you. If you're a fan of folklore and myth and need a way to satisfy that morbid curiosity on a weekly basis, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button so the YouTube gods send more content like this to your sub box and recommended feed. And then, brace yourself for the very messed up origins of Snow White. Yeah, I'm putting very in the title this time. You can't stop me. We're starting this one off strong with a doozy of a Snow White story from Switzerland. And at risk of hurting this episode's retention stats, I'm just going to warn you now, this might be the grossest, goriest, and funniest version of all of them. There is no happily ever after here, just bloodbathily ever after. Even still, it has all the touchstones of the archetypal Snow White story that Disney adapted almost 90 years ago. It opens by introducing us to 7 dwarves who live right on the border of Switzerland and Germany, between the towns of Brugg and Waldshut. Their little house was located deep in the Black Forest, and they never got any visitors. But one fateful night, that changed, and the dwarves had no idea the trouble that it was going to bring them. The 7 of them were chowing down dinner, debating the beauty of the precious gems they had mined that morning, when there was a knock at their door for the first time since any of them could remember. Unsure how to proceed, the eldest, who we're going to call Julian, took it upon himself to answer the door. And he was bewildered to see it was some 19-year-old in a bucket hat selling solar panels. Nah, for real though, there was a gorgeous woman on the other side. Only this pretty young thing was in pretty bad shape. Unlike the Grimm's fairy tale and the Disney adaptation, she doesn't share a whole backstory about her psycho, jealous stepmom trying to eat her heart, but she does tell them that she'd gotten lost in the Black Forest and was wandering for days before stumbling upon their house. Then she asks if they'd be so kind as to give her some food and a place to sleep for the night, filling the room with tension. Because there was only 7 beds in the house and the dwarves refused to share with each other, meaning the girl would have to share with one of them, which I doubt she was thrilled about. That's when a new argument broke out between them. How would they decide who got to be this babe's bedfellow? A few suggestions were made. One argued that it should be him because he brought back the most from the mines that day. Another claimed that since he was the tallest and thinnest, he had the most room in his bed, so it'd only be natural for him to share it. Ultimately though, it was Julian who said, "Screw you, I'm gonna screw her," and just whisked the girl over to his bed. Unfortunately for Julian, he was unable to secure the payload. Before he could even get under the blankets, there was another knock at the door. The mysterious maiden volunteered to answer it, and they allowed her to, figuring that, worst case scenario, whoever she had run into the forest to try and escape from had found her and was just gonna throw her in a sack and take her away. None of their business. But to their surprise, it was another girl on the run, and she also requested a bed for the night. Before any of them could volunteer as tribute though, the maiden replied that all 7 of their beds were filled by the 7 dwarves and slammed the door in her face. It's too bad Snow White didn't reply that way in the Grimm Brothers story. That would have saved her so much trouble. Unfortunately for this maiden, it only made things worse. She managed to piss off the beggar lady and confuse her, because if there were only 7 beds for the 7 dwarves, why was there only 1 woman? That could only mean one thing. She was sleeping with all of them. Choo choo. Well, the beggar lady couldn't just sit idly by while these people were having the time of their lives in the privacy of their own home and hurting no one in the process. While she wandered through the Black Forest looking for shelter elsewhere, she ran into two vagabonds and told them about the isolated little house, how it was inhabited by dwarves who mined precious jewels all day long, and how its residents would be sound asleep after their evening orgy. So that night, she returned to the dwarf's house with the men by her side, kicked down the door, and massacred all of them. Seriously, in the Swiss Snow White, the 7 dwarves are slaughtered. The vagabonds go on to bury the dwarves' bodies in the backyard, an oddly respectful choice that took half the time it normally would because, you know, they're dwarves. Then they ransacked the house of precious jewels. They never did find the maiden though, and to this day, no one knows what happened to her. Now, some might have a hard time understanding the moral of this story, but that's where my 7 years of studying folklore and mythology for this channel come into play. For a self-anointed expert such as myself, the moral is obvious. Don't be a hoe. And that goes for you too, bros.
Remember to subscribe for more riveting analyses by Jon Solo every Thursday.
For real though, as wildly different as that story's ending is compared to what we're accustomed to, I love how many story beats they have in common. You've got these 7 dwarves giving the damsel in distress shelter, then that damsel goes on to answer the door to a bitter and jealous woman who tries to kill her. We are missing some quintessential details though, like the context for the damsel's distress and the love story with the handsome prince. Well, that's where the variant from Scotland comes into play, which is plenty messed up on its own. First though, Gunther has an announcement for you dog dads and moms watching. He wants you to listen while I tell you about his favorite sponsor, Sundays for Dogs. And are you really gonna say no to that face? There's an old saying about dogs that always tugs at my heartstrings. They may be a part of your life, but you are all of theirs. Except I'm no fool. There's one thing my dogs love just as much, if not more than me, and that's food. Which is why I always felt guilty feeding them extra processed kibble. The breaking point for me though was when my little Penny was refusing to eat. She'd literally turn away from the bowl after I filled it. It honestly made mealtime stressful because I felt like I had to stand there and watch her eat. Then Sundays for Dogs entered our lives. Sundays is a first of its kind dog food that was made to optimize your dog's nutrition in the most simple way possible. It's not kibble, but it's not that extra fancy pre-cooked frozen stuff either, so it doesn't take any prep time. Also, unlike kibble, which is cooked at blazing hot temperatures that kill most of the nutrition and flavor, Sundays is air dried. So not only does your furry companion get to look forward to delicious meals, but they're way healthier. Sundays is basically jerky, so your dogs feel like they're eating meat straight from the dinner table, and it's 100% human grade from start to finish. To give your doggo a chance to experience true bliss for half the price, hit the link at the top of the description, go to sundaysfordogs.com/Jon Solo, or use code Jon Solo at checkout. So as I mentioned, this story is of Scottish origin. This particular version was collected by Joseph Jacobs and published in his Celtic Fairy Tales collection in 1892. And I think you're going to be surprised where he found it. Or you'll think it's obvious and I'm an idiot. Personally, when I hear about writers like Jacobs or the Grimms or Basile collecting stories, I always envision a wizened old hag telling the tale by the light of the fire, in very much the same way her grandma told it to her when she was a little haglet. But that's only how they found some of their stories. Some tales were discovered in old Viking manuscripts, in the journals of artists and intellectuals, and in the case of this story, magazines. Joseph Jacobs found the tale of Gold Tree and Silver Tree in an issue of Celtic magazine published in 1888, but certain details led him to believe the story was actually imported from elsewhere, as it doesn't portray accurately the marriage customs of the Highlands. And if you stay until the end, you'll see what I mean. Now, like a lot of Snow White stories, but clearly not all of them based on the last tale that I showed you, this one opens by introducing us to a beautiful young princess and and her seriously insecure mother. Their names are Gold Tree and Silver Tree respectively, but I'm gonna call them Goldie and Sylvie because it flows so much better. So the mother, Sylvie, has this strange condition where she needs smoke blown up her ass on a regular basis. And like many other evil queens, she has a trusted confidant that she goes to when she needs an ego boost. Only instead of a magic mirror, it's a trout. And one day he reveals the devastating truth that her daughter Goldie is hotter than she is. This was world-shattering for Sylvie, but she handled it like any loving mother would, by vowing to eat her daughter's heart and liver. She was even bold enough to demand her husband retrieve them for her, and he agreed to it. Listen, the king knew that the queen hadn't aged the most gracefully. Sure, she had a few gray nose hairs that were almost always visible. Her farts were slipping out more and more lately. And yeah, that cute dimple that he used to adore had grown into a deep, dark pit of broken dreams. But that was his wife, damn it. Not to mention that if he had rejected her request outright, she might have gone for his liver. Besides, what the king said he would do and what he actually did were two different things. That sneaky bastard ordered his chef to serve his wife the heart and liver of a goat. Meanwhile, he sent Goldie away to another kingdom to marry a handsome prince and live happily ever after. It's too bad that's not what happened. So at this point, you can already see this story's parallels with the opening acts of Disney's Snow White and the Grimm story that inspired it. The major difference in the Scottish version is that instead of having to live with dwarves, our heroine is already married to her handsome prince at this point. In fact, there are no dwarves in this story, just like how there aren't in the remake. Unless you count those CGI monstrosities, but I would rather forget they exist, to be honest. Now, a year after this all went down with Goldie's secret escape, her mother returned to the trout for another ego boost. After summoning him with her classic phrase, "Trouty bonny little fellow, am not I the most beautiful queen in the world?" he replied, absolutely not. Your daughter has only gotten hotter since your last visit, and you are on a serious decline, my friend. For some reason, the trout is from North Jersey. Naturally, Sylvie is both offended and confused, so she confronts her husband and orders that he have their ship prepared so she can pay her daughter a visit. Now our point of view changes to Goldie's perspective. She'd been living her best life as queen of Haggisburg, and after nearly a year of living in constant fear of her mother tracking her down, she'd finally gotten comfortable in her new home. Just in time for one of the tower guards to call out that her mother's ship was spotted on the horizon. And unlike Snow White, who was blissfully unaware that it was the evil queen paying her a visit, Goldie knew immediately that her mother intended on killing her. But similar to how the dwarves left Snow White unattended, Goldie's husband, the king, was away on a hunting trip. Goldie resorted to locking herself in a room that her mother couldn't access, and this would have been a great strategy if Goldie's guards didn't let Sylvie have free reign to explore the castle grounds. Part of me wonders if this was a custom at the time and that maybe it would have been taboo for a soldier to tell a queen where she could and couldn't go, but I've done zero research on that theory. Well, Sylvie manages to track down the room that Goldie is in because Goldie called out to her. But when her daughter says she can't leave the room, Sylvie uses some textbook motherly manipulation. She convinces Goldie to stick her finger through the keyhole for a little kiss, and when she does, the evil queen stabs her with a poisoned needle and she drops dead. This is pretty similar to what happened with Snow White and the poisoned apple. Just like the queen's kiss, the apple was offered as a gesture of kindness. But unlike Snow White, Goldie isn't saved as a byproduct of clumsiness or domestic battery. When her husband comes home from his hunting trip and learns what happened, he's devastated and refuses to bury her. Instead, he had her body sealed in a glass coffin in the same room she died in. No one was allowed in there except for him. But when he remarried a year later, his new wife, who you're gonna see is a bit of a badass, couldn't help her curiosity. While he was away on another one of his hunting trips, she stole his key and let herself in to find the most beautiful corpse she'd ever seen. Now, the new queen was no necro, but this was a sexy corpse. And while she was miring every perfect inch of it, she noticed there was a needle sticking out of one of the fingers. Figuring that she'd already violated her husband's trust, she might as well do a little more violating. and she opened up the glass coffin. Then she pulled the needle out of the finger and Goldie sprang to life. Skipping ahead to that evening, the king, who's still gloomy about Goldie's death, comes home from his hunting trip and his new wife asks him what she could do that would put a smile on his face. He drearily replies that the only thing that could make him smile would be to see Goldie alive again, which had to sting a little bit. But at that moment, Goldie entered the room, and the king's face lit up. Now here's another point where the new wife proves just how cool she is. She tells the king that she totally understands if she has to leave because Goldie had dibs on him. I know, right? She's a total bro, and the king loved that about her. So he decided he would just marry them both. That's the detail Joseph Jacobs took issue with. Polygamy was not common in the Highlands, so there's no reason either of these wives should be such good sports about sharing their marriage. Their sharage. Now, if you don't mind, go park the carriage in the garage. Don't disparage, but the best part is yet to come. And I really mean it. See, a year later, when the trout reminded Sylvie yet again that she wasn't as hot as Goldie, she set sail to pay her daughter another visit. But this time, Goldie wasn't hiding. She, her husband, and her sister wife, who I'm going to call Bronzy from here on out, were ready and waiting for the queen's arrival. And as soon as her foot touched their native soil, Bronzy took charge of the situation. She was incredibly welcoming to the queen. She greeted her with open arms and declared that they would spare no expense in making her feel comfortable while she was their guest. In return, the queen offered a bottle of wine. But for some reason, she insisted that Goldie be the first to drink it. Bronzy was smart though. She replied that it's actually custom in their kingdom that the person who offers a drink takes the first draught of it. Sylvie poured the wine into her chalice, slowly lifted it to her lips, and held it there, careful not to spill a single drop. When suddenly Bronzy bumped into the queen, sending a mouthful of wine spilling down her gullet. What happened next could only be described as justice. Sylvie's eyes went wide, her skin turned black, and she collapsed to the ground. The queen was dead, and her soldiers braced themselves for a very awkward reunion with their king. As for Goldie and Bronzy, they lived happily ever after as sister wives. Probably the least realistic part of this story. But what did we learn from this tale, boys and girls? I'd love for you to comment your takeaways, but personally, I see this as a warning about the dangers of jealousy. Sylvie had everything going for her. She was a beautiful, rich queen with a gorgeous daughter, and she could have spent every day being grateful for those blessings. Instead, she was miserable because the only thing that she cared about was her own beauty. So when that was gone, she had nothing left. Joseph Epstein once said, "Of all the 7 deadly sins, only envy is no fun at all." And in her final moments, I think Sylvie would have agreed. Until next time, my name is Jon Solo, and remember, Jon shot first.